Join me on a very busy day in my kitchen while I prepare 3 from scratch meals for my family. And also I'm going to be making some sauerkraut today and some soap and just a few other homemaking things. The very first thing that I'm doing this morning is I am feeding my sourdough. Now, I've mentioned on my channel before that I've had a sourdough starter in my home for over a decade, and so at this point I do not measure anything when I am feeding my starter. I just give it flour and water until I get the correct consistency that I am looking for. Basically, you want it to look like a thin pancake batter. And you know, sometimes I get it thicker, other times thinner, and it still always works out. But anyway, feeding my starter, then I am running downstairs to get some laundry going. I don't have like a really set laundry routine. I just do laundry throughout the day. Pretty much every day I do one load unless it's a day where I'm doing towels or sheets or blanket or something extra. But if I get a load going in the morning and get it in the dryer, we can get it folded and put it away that day, and then nothing ever gets backed up.
Jenny
After laundry and doing a little bit of cleaning in the house, I'm coming back into the kitchen to get some cinnamon rolls started. Now, these will actually be for tomorrow morning's breakfast, and so that's kind of the biggest thing when you're making any types of sourdough recipes or breads, is that it's just something you have to think about a little bit earlier on, because I like to let everything bulk ferment to get all of those probiotic benefits from the sourdough. And so I'm starting this on this morning, but we'll actually be eating these tomorrow. Now, I do not have a mixer, so I just put everything straight into my bread machine. And then I'll put the bread machine on the kneading mode and let that knead my dough together. I have the bread machine that I use linked down in my description box below. I oftentimes make sandwich bread in there. Anytime I'm doing like a stretch and full bread, obviously I do not need the bread machine for that. I purchased it for making really easy sourdough sandwich loaves, but I also use it a lot to knead dough for any recipe. Thank Element for sponsoring today's video. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink that is made with all great ingredients and none of the junk. So it does not have any sugar in it, no coloring, artificial ingredients. It's gluten-free, so it's suitable for all the different diets, keto, paleo, all of those types of things. My family has been enjoying all the different Element flavors, and during the winter time we really love drinking it with steamed milk and basically making a hot chocolate with all the different Element chocolate flavors. Our favorite is definitely the chocolate chai and the chocolate raspberry. When you sweat, the primary electrolyte loss is sodium, and when sodium is not replaced, it's common to experience muscle cramps and fatigue. Electrolytes facilitate hundreds of functions in the body, including hormone regulation, nutrient absorption, and fluid balance. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, and fatigue. Right now, Element is offering my viewers a free sample pack with any order, so that's 8 different flavors that you will be able to try to see which one you like best, or even a great way to share Element with a friend. So if you guys are ready to try Element, you can use the link down in my description box below, or you can go to drinkelement.com/ouroilyhouse. That's DRINKLMNT.com/ouroilyhouse.
So I'm gonna make sure that everyone gets some today. Because have you been
now that I have my cinnamon rolls kneading, I am moving on to starting lunch. Now we have a lot of wild game to get through. I told you guys that my dad went moose hunting and we got a lot of the moose. We also still have a lot of venison left over from hunting season. And so on this day, I'm just starting off by browning up a couple pounds of ground venison and then adding in an onion and some minced garlic and a lot of different seasonings. A lot of times when I don't have meat fully defrosted, I will go to any type of ground meat because it's easy to make from frozen. I add in onion and garlic and a bunch of seasonings, and then I start thinking, okay, what can I make with this? And so I will go to my pantry and see what I have. I will go to my refrigerator, my freezer, and I try to think of a different recipe that I can add to ground beef or venison or whatever ground meat I have. Now, obviously, I can fall back on chili and spaghetti, sloppy joes, some of those more traditional ones, and I do those quite often. But I like to try to think of different things, and today, with the ingredients that I had, I decided to make, I don't really know what the real name of this is called, but we call it cowboy lasagna. So basically, I am peeling and slicing potatoes, and those will be my noodles for, the lasagna, if you will. And then into my meat and onion garlic mixture, I'm adding in a couple cans of tomato sauce, and then in a 9x13 pan, just like you would layer a lasagna, I layer potatoes, meat, and cheese until I fill the pan up and use all of my ingredients, and then bake this with cheese on top, just like a lasagna. And that is what we're eating for lunch today. It's actually really delicious, and we like serving it with a little scoop of sour cream, and typically I put some sauerkraut with this as well. As soon as I got that in the oven, I am back at the dishes. This is something that I have to do all day long. I don't know if you guys remember, but there is a show that I think about when I was a kid that I watched. I don't remember the name of it. I remember there was a lamb in there, and they sang this song that said, "This is the song that never ends." And pretty much all day when I'm doing dishes, I sing, "This is the job that never ends." I feel like that is my theme song for so many of the different things I do as a homemaker. We have lots of jobs that never end. And I know that's like such a silly thing to say, but I don't know why I get that song in my head all the time and I will sing it. And it's just so true. But remembering to find joy in the little things, and even whenever you're doing a lot of the same things over and over again. All right, this afternoon after lunchtime, and everybody is either sleeping or having quiet time, depending on the age of the child, I have a few different projects to do in the kitchen. And the first one is making sauerkraut. So anytime that I make sauerkraut, I try to make a few gallons at a time. You guys know that we love sauerkraut around here. I try serving sauerkraut at almost every meal that we have. It's just a really good probiotic and is great for the gut and gut health. And so that is something that I try to get into my family's diet often. Now, I start giving my babies sauerkraut right whenever I give them solid foods. So around 1, when I start giving them any other food, I start putting little bits of sauerkraut on their plates. And all of them, down to number 6, do not like it at first. They all put it in their mouth and they kind of make that, like puckery lip, sour face where they don't really like it. They don't really touch it. And I keep offering it to them, and eventually all of my kids so far, now my baby, can't really say him yet, but the older 5, all absolutely love sauerkraut and beg for it at every meal. In fact, my husband and I eventually are like, okay, that's probably enough, because if you know anything about sauerkraut and probiotics, you want to start off with a smaller amount and then work your way up whenever you start eating it, and not like overdo it with the sauerkraut. And sometimes we feel as if they are overdoing it and we have to like slow them down on the amount that they eat. So all that to say, if you have picky eaters or kids that do not like certain foods, sometimes just continuing to have them try it will eventually lead them to liking it. So for my sauerkraut, I chop it all by hand because we like a crunchier sauerkraut. So I find doing it in the food processor makes it too soggy for my family's liking. And then I add salt to it. And then I make a brine by basically punching it down, massaging it, almost like you're kneading it. And then I put it into mason jars, and I put a little weight on top to keep the cabbage below the brine. And then I put little tops on there. You don't have to have all these fancy tools because I make sauerkraut so much, I do, but putting a loose lid on top works just as well. You just want to make sure that it has some air, because it will expand and continue to make more brine as it sits on the counter and ferments. And if it is tightly closed, it could explode. Now, don't ask me how I know that. One night we had a ferment explode in the middle of the night, and it scared me and my husband. Like, I jumped out of bed. Like, actually, it scared me. I don't think it even woke him up. But a glass jar, it was actually coconut yogurt, and it exploded in my kitchen, actually at my old house. And we had coconut yogurt on the ceiling, and this glass jar like shattered. It sounded like someone breaking in my house. But anyway, that to say, leave your jars loose. I have the whole tutorial video of making sauerkraut on my YouTube channel, and I also have the recipe written out on my blog. So if you want to start making sauerkraut, it is so easy to do. And so if you are interested in that and you want the whole exact recipe, you can get that with the link down in my description box. All right, the next thing I have going on today is I'm actually making some liquid hand soap. We have foaming hand soap in a couple of our bathrooms, but then we have some liquid hand soap dispensers in 2 other of the bathrooms. And so in the places where we have those, I actually make this soap because I don't like buying liquid hand soap, because at the store I have never been able to find one that was made with ingredients that I loved. And so I have found several different ways actually to make a liquid hand soap. I have one recipe on my blog where I make it out of a cold processed soap bar. And then this one I am making it with Castile soap and fractionated coconut oil. You see I'm making it lavender. I also have this recipe on my blog, so I will link that down below with you. Making soap is really fun to me. I love making all of our soap. I make laundry soap, all of our bar bath soap. I make shampoo and conditioner, hand soaps. I just love making all of our skincare. The main reason is that I like to know the different ingredients that we are putting onto our skin. Our skin is our largest organ, and as we put things on there, it absorbs into our bloodstream. And so I like to make sure that I have clean, safe ingredients for my family. And the other big thing is it saves so much money making your own soap from home. And so once you get an arsenal of natural ingredients in your home to make different skincare things and hair care, you'll find that a lot of the recipes call for similar ingredients. And so now that I have all of my stuff like stockpiled, I can make all of this stuff so cheap. I buy a lot of it in bulk, and so it really does save our family a lot of money. Now right here I'm checking the pH level of the soap, and depending on the pH will determine if I need to add a preservative to this. Now this one had a high enough pH, and so I did not need to add any preservative to this soap. And so I'm just gonna put this in the bathroom, and this project is done. It was really that simple. And like I said, if you want any of these recipes that I'm talking about, I have all of them on my blog, ouroilyhouse.com. For dinner, I'm actually going to be making some tacos, and I have a bunch of meat here defrosting in my sink. I am going to use a moose roast for the meat of this recipe. Now it is not fully defrosted, and so I'm going to be making this in my Instapot. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding a dry rub to my roast with a bunch of different seasonings. Now anytime I'm making tacos, I like to use taco type seasoning. So I'm doing onion powder, garlic powder, chili powder, cumin, salt, pepper, paprika, and I'm not really measuring. I'm just doing probably about a teaspoon of each on both sides of the roast. While I am putting the dry rub on, I have my Instapot on the saute mode to get it nice and hot. And then after I'm done putting the spices all over my roast, I'm gonna add some oil to my Instapot, and then I will sear this on all 4 sides. Also added in about a cup of water just to add some liquid in there to keep it nice and juicy and tender. And then I'm going to just let this cook on high pressure for about 30 minutes, and then I will remove it from the heat and it will shred up very nicely. It's one of my favorite ways actually to make a roast in the Instapot. Now we have a lot of different roasts because whenever you buy meat in bulk or you're getting like a whole moose, you get a lot of roast, and so we get kind of sick of the traditional roast, like pot roast with carrots and mashed potatoes. Now don't get me wrong, we all love that and we do that really often, but I like to switch it up and doing something like this where we're making tacos with the meat or using the meat for just something different than a traditional pot roast is a great way to get through the meat without anybody getting sick of it. And so anyway, I did also say 30 minutes on that. I actually ended up doing 60 minutes because it was still pretty frozen, and so I wanted to make sure that it was cooked through before all the pressure was released. While my roast is cooking, I am cutting up all of my toppings for my tacos. Now, for tacos, I feel like they're so delicious to make and they're so fun because you really can do it so many different ways. Now, today we had tomatoes, cilantro, and red onions in my refrigerator, and so that is what we are going to top our tacos with. Now, if I would have had some avocados, I would have sliced those up, but we currently didn't have any. I also like to do roasted corn sometimes. It just really depends on what I have in my pantry and my refrigerator to know what I'm going to top these with. Now, as always, I am saving all of my scraps for the chickens. They love when I bring out any type of vegetable scrap, and I also feel like it's not really wasting anything because they will eat it and give us eggs, and eventually we will eat the eggs. So it's just kind of a fun little way to make sure that we're using everything in our home. I like to be very sustainable and not waste anything if possible. Now I'm shredding up some cheese to go with our tacos, and then I'm going to go back to my meat and start shredding that. So I set this out probably about 30 minutes ago. It was done, and I set it out to let it cool, and now I am going to shred that and fry up some tortillas. Anytime that I'm making like a street taco, I love frying the tortilla first in a little bit of butter. I think it makes it so much more delicious than just making it plain. For the sauce, I'm doing a scoop of sour cream and drizzling on some sweet and spicy date sauce by the Date Lady. We love that on tacos. After we were finished with dinner and had all that cleaned up, I went back to my cinnamon rolls. The next step is adding in some salt, baking powder, baking soda, and letting that knead in. And then this is where I make a big mistake. I had butter, and you're supposed to use softened butter, but I only had frozen butter. And so I decided, you know what, I'll just melt it in my cinnamon sugar in here. Now, obviously, if you've ever made cinnamon rolls, that's a very dumb idea, because when I roll out my dough, you are supposed to put like the softened butter, cinnamon, sugar paste in your dough. And I instead had this like whole liquidy thing that I thought like, oh, I'll just pour it on top of the dough. Well, it totally, as it would and should, ran off the dough. So anyway, you're gonna see I didn't edit any of this out, so you get to see the real deal mess that I made when I made this. But I will say they were still so good. It did not change the outcome of this dish. It just made for a bigger cleaning up mess, because when I went to roll up my dough, the cinnamon, sugar, melted butter like dripped out everywhere. But I did end up like scraping some of it back off and pouring it on top of the roll, so I didn't waste any of it. And like I said, these were still so good. These are Sister's Farmhouse on Boone sourdough cinnamon roll recipe. Now, she doesn't mess up like this in hers. She tells you to use softened butter. I just didn't listen. And so yours will turn out much prettier than mine if you follow her recipe. But they are so good. My kids love when I make these. It's definitely more of a treat and something that I make, I don't know, not that often, but every once in a while. I am the cool mom and I make these, and they all absolutely love them. They're so delicious. So if you want something super yummy to make this weekend, go look up her sourdough cinnamon roll recipe. Now, I am doing this the night before and putting these in my 9x13 pan, and I will just put these in the refrigerator. So then in the morning, all I'll have to do is make my cream cheese topping and bake these and then pour the cream cheese on top of them. So that's my favorite thing to do, is to start prepping breakfast the night before. It just makes my morning so much more smooth. So the next morning, while I am baking my cinnamon rolls, I'm also frying up some eggs, because we are going to have some eggs with our cinnamon rolls. For the cream cheese topping, I'm just doing 8 ounces of cream cheese, a half a cup of heavy cream, and a half a cup of honey, and a couple teaspoons of vanilla. And I will mix this all in my saucepan until it's all melted and mixed together, and pour that on top of my cinnamon rolls. Now, the cream cheese topping is not, you don't have to have it to eat these. You can definitely enjoy them without it, but that topping makes it so much more delicious. And so I love to go that extra step and add that to the top of my cinnamon rolls. Thank you guys so much for coming along on a busy day of me making lots of yummy food. And as always, I will link any recipes that I have down in my description box below. And if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. I get out a new video every single week.